Welcome back, wherever you are around the world, to another one of Nathan Bell's commentary videos. Today, Nate wants to talk about cancel culture.
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about cancel culture because I wrote a song about the monk who burnt himself in Vietnam in the 60s in protest to religious persecution. And I uploaded it to YouTube, and YouTube didn't allow it. Now, I kind of understand where YouTube's coming from. It's a sensitive subject. I also used the image of the monk burning himself as the backdrop for the lyric video, which I think is what YouTube has said is basically saying they don't want on their platform. Now, YouTube's a private company, so it's up to their discretion what they allow on their platform. It's not like the government's coming out and saying it's illegal for me to discuss that subject. But, you know, it's like, for me, I get it. You know, children go on YouTube. Everyone has access to YouTube. People who are vulnerable can go on YouTube. And if they're exposed to content about self-harm and suicide and what that monk did, it may provoke them to do a similar thing, and we don't want that. But it's like, as an artist, I discuss subjects of life, and the role in my mind of the artist is to reflect on life. And you know, and personally, my view of what that monk did, it's extreme, but I think it was a great act of protest as well. And the monks have their own views about reaching enlightenment through burning yourself and stuff. But I think what he did it as an act of protest to make a statement. I think it's a bit extreme. It's certainly not a sort of act of protest that I would do. To me, it seems self-defeating. It's like my support worker Ezekiel, like I said, it's better to stay and fight than to do something so extreme as that. But you know, I have great, I suppose, admiration for that monk, because he really believed in what he was standing for, and that's why he did that. That's why he burnt himself, to make a point and to take a stand, and I believe in making a point and taking a stand. But, you know, like I said, YouTube's a private company. It's their discretion what they put on their platform, and they don't want vulnerable people exposed to that sort of content. But this is how we've become. We've become a very sensitive society where certain things are off limits. And as an artist, that's difficult for me, because I want to discuss all nature of subjects in life. And my work is quite grim. And, you know, it's like my book, Kings of the New Age, The Quest of the Balancing Stones. The basic premise of Kings of the New Age in the political timeline is the justification of violent revolution. You know, an extremely taboo subject. Most people would just say immediately, there's never any justification for violence, but I know better than that. And that's why I wrote a book with a premise about the justification of violent revolution. So I deal with hot topics, and that's what I believe one of the ways that the artist can contribute to society is to deal with hot, sensitive topics that are controversial and provoke thought. So when we start putting limitations around what subjects we can discuss, it limits our minds from being able to explore controversial and touchy subjects, and to be able to think and consider and be independent thinkers. You know, in order to be independent thinkers, we need to be able to discuss all myriad of subjects about this life, you know, and I'm about critiquing life and about reflecting on life. So I don't want to be restricted in what I can discuss. So I wrote a song which is basically about suicide, because I wanted to discuss what that monk did and his act of protest, which was an act of suicide. And YouTube has said, no, we're not going to have that on our platform, and they gave me a warning: if I upload any further content like that, I'll be banned from uploading videos for a week or so. And they also sent me an email saying, do you need help? If you need help, reach out for help. It's not like I'm certainly not suicidal or thinking about self-immolating and burning myself. So, you know, but we've become a very sensitive society, particularly around mental illness and suicide, and we won't discuss it anymore. And I don't think not discussing the subject is the answer. I think we need to discuss the subject. We need to talk about it, and we need to talk about life, because we all need to reach our own conclusions on life, because that's how you live a rewarding life, by understanding life. So, but with regards to cancel culture, I do think it's all about censorship, and we do want to cancel racist bigots. We don't and sexist bigots, and we do want to cancel homophobic bigots. We don't want abusive hate speech being spoken in our community. We're sick of hate speech. So there's some things that should be cancelled and some ideas that we probably don't need to explore as a society anymore, and that we don't want people to explore, especially publicly and on public platforms. So I do support some cancel culture and say that some things shouldn't be discussed publicly because they're just hate speech and promoting negative, bigoted, hateful views in the world. But I was a bit disappointed that YouTube didn't allow me to publish the song Man on Fire because I thought it was a very poetic song which I wrote, performed by Tommy Macko-Caddick, about the subject of that monk who burnt himself in protest. So it is a bit of the cancel culture syndrome affecting me and my ability to tell stories and to promote stories and narratives in the world now. So it's come and it's hit me, the cancel culture. It's limited and restricted my ability to tell the stories that I want to tell about life, which frustrates me because I'm big on freedom of expression and freedom of thought and discussing openly the subjects of life. So yeah, but certainly, as I said, there's certain things that should be cancelled. We don't want hate speech, and that's why I put up my video about Kyle Sandilands, very negative, hateful man who likes to berate and insult people. We want to get rid of that sort of language. We want to get rid of that senseless hatred. So I'm not necessarily against cancel culture because there's some things we don't want in our society. We don't want these voices speaking anymore. We're sick of them. They bring nothing but negativity and hatred and discrimination into the world. But I thought, I was a bit surprised by YouTube's decision. I get where they're coming from. Children are on the platform and vulnerable people are on the platform, and we don't want to provoke anyone to do anything to hurt themselves. But, like I said, what that monk did in my mind was a great act of protest and resistance against oppression. So I see it as a bit of a different subject. It was a suicide, but I see it as a bit of a different thing to a suicide. It's not what I would do in a protest. It's too extreme. But I respect that monk and the way that he sat still bravely while burning and his conviction in what he stood for and the statement he wanted to make about the oppression his people were facing. I think it was a very powerful thing. So I think YouTube's banned that image off their platform, and that's a great historical image. I don't think it should be banned, and I think people should talk about what that monk did, and it should be discussed, because it was a talk and a discussion about oppression and people who are desperate because they're facing severe oppression and persecution and discrimination. So I hope YouTube doesn't ban this video. I might get a second strike for putting this one up. We'll see what happens. I've discussed some pretty controversial subjects on my channel so far, including the justification of violent action, and YouTube hasn't called me out on any of those discussions, so respect to YouTube. They've let me discuss some pretty hot topics. They must be looking at my videos, and I've discussed some pretty hot, sensitive topics over the course of my series of talks, and the first one to get banned was this one about the monk who burnt himself in protest. So I'm surprised they haven't banned any of my other content, given some of the subjects that I discussed. So we'll see whether I get a second strike for putting up this video. This video mentions suicide, so potentially it will get a strike. But I just want to point out, I'm certainly not thinking about setting myself on fire in protest for anything. I want to live. I love life. I wish I could live for millions of years and build a spaceship and travel around the universe indefinitely and never die. So I have no intention of dying and no desire to die at all. So drop a comment in the comment section about whether any content you've ever put up has been cancelled or censored, and what your thoughts are about cancel culture and censorship of ideas and expression.